Okay, so we are still having our literary colloquium on the topic of literature and nature, and now we have the final session of the second day of our colloquium. We have now three presentations, and we are starting with a presentation by a student from our university, Lenka Prágerová. She's doing her master's degree currently. And the title of her presentation is Effects of Evil on Nature in Tolkien Stories. So Lenka, you can start.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I will start. Yes. Can you hear me properly? It's fine?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So in my presentation, I would like to focus on three locations from Tolkien, because that's actually part of my master thesis. I will be talking about this I will try to compare them to hell and to a Christian hell. So I will start with Utumno and Angband and Mordor. So first, the Utumno and Angband. It's basically these fortresses of Morgoth, which was the first Dark Lord. They were centers of evil, and they were associated with destruction, corruption, and a spread of darkness. Morgoth represents a fallen and a corrupted being who sought power and domination for his own purposes, and this led him to great suffering and strife in the world. And his actions and existence of places like Utumno and Angband, this can indeed be seen as moral consequences, and in the sense that they represent the consequences of individual choices to pursue power, control, and malevolence. Utumno was in Morgoth ring described in the following sentence, and the lands of the far north were all made desolate in those days, and so her ever reminded, for there Utumno was delved exceeding deep, and its pits and caverns reach out far beneath the earth, and they were filled with fires and with great hosts of Saran of Melkor. And I use this sentence as a foundation for my further analysis of hellish imagery, and then I compared with Bible. So Utumno is described as being delved exceeding deep, which indicates an excavation that goes far beyond the surface. You can see on a picture, which lead us to thinking that the evil within is probably buried deep, and apparently it symbolizes the depth of darkness within the earth itself. The presence of pits and caverns, it paints a picture of a labyrinthine landscape where shadows and echoes dominate and are typically associated with something unknown, hidden, or maybe unsettling. And the fact that these pits and caverns reach far beneath the earth, it amplifies the sense of abyss, I would say, which hints again at the idea that this is a place that is completely cut off from the world of light and life. And fires within these pits and caverns adds an element of hellfire, as they often symbolize, I would say, destruction, suffering, and torment. And it is actually fires that are often mentioned in a description of hell in Bible. Let's say in Revelation 19:20, there's a passage that is intended to depict hell as a place of, let's say, eternal punishment for the wicked. A lake of fire, and that represents intense suffering and torment. And there's another example, again from Revelation 20:10, and the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of burning sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet had been thrown. they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. And these texts describe the fate of the devil and the false prophet that are being thrown into a lake of burning sulfur and being tormented day and night forever and ever. And this passage, I would say, reinforce the concept of eternal punishment and suffering that contributes to the common understanding of hell as a place of, let's say, unending torment for those who are seen as evil or who oppose to God's will. Tolkien states that the imprisonment, corruption, and enslavement of the elves represent a moral wrongdoing. Melkor's actions, they are usually driven by envy and a desire to mock Eru's original creation. And this reflects a classic theme of good versus evil, and where Melkor's actions are morally reprehensible due to suffering he inflicts upon innocent beings. And the creation of Orc as a twisted and hideous race is a consequence of Melkor's malevolent intentions. And this can be seen as a punishment for his rebellion against Eru's will. And Tolkien, in one of his letters, depicted them as broad, squat, flat noses with sallow skin. And this feature create an image of stocky and unattractive creatures. And the fact that Melkor's creation are ugly and corrupted, it stands in a contrast to Eru's original design for a harmonious and beautiful world. And the contrast can be seen in the following example. Green things fell sick and rotted, and the rivers were choked with weeds and slime. Forests grew dark and perilous. Beasts became monsters of horror and ivory. And this is where Yavanna's efforts are meant to bring beauty to life to Arda, but Melkor always, he systematically undoes her work whenever possible. And Angband is similar to Utumno. It stands as a stark manifestation of his defiance against divine order that was established by V'lars. Melkor's ambition to dominate and control the world, it leads him to construct Angband, a fortress that becomes a focal point of his corruptive influence. And this act of defiance and motion, a chain of events that results in widespread suffering and conflict. The fortress becomes a hub for dark creatures and twisted creations such as orcs or dragons, which are basically perversions of the original forms of elves and men. And Oberhelman, he pointed out that Angband has actually a symbolic significance, and it can be seen as a terrestrial embodiment of the Christian hell, and at the same time, it can be compared to the underworlds from, let's say, Northern European mythologies. And from these mythologies, we can say it's a concept of Niflheim, which is the cold and foggy underworld that is ruled by goddess Hel, and which serves as the building unit for Tolkien's Angband. And initially, Tolkien, he considered Angband as a place of punishment for the souls of men, and this early concept aligned with the idea of Angband as a representation of hell or a place of damnation. But Tolkien, he eventually abandoned this notion and made a shift in his writings where Angband represents a concept of hell in opposition to heaven of Valinor. And from that portrayal of Angband supplements Tolkien's vision of hell when she described the Angband as a place where darkness and suffering and malevolence mixed together, they create a nightmarish landscape. And at the heart of Angband There's a Tangorodrim, which is a mountain that is built from slag and rubble, and that evokes the image of a landscape which was forged from destruction and decay, and the architecture of interior reinforces the hellish imagery with its labyrinthine tunnels and dungeons and pits, and as they mirror descend into the depths of hell, where souls are trapped in a maze of suffering and torment. And this Angband also represents a moral and physical fall, as Fonstad's depiction of Angband resembles it. As Angband was built in Eret Engridin, that was a mountain range in northwest of Middle Earth, I believe. This physical descent into the depth of the earth, it can be seen as a metaphorical representation of physical fall, and the labyrinthine tunnels, dungeons, and pits and stairs that basically lie beneath the surface, it emphasized the idea that we are descending into a dark and subterranean realm that symbolizes a fall from light and open space above ground into a hidden and oppressive world below. And the moral fall is depicted through the actions and intention that are associated with Angband. And its description as the hell is house of iron, and its portrayal as a place of torment and suffering, and this indicate a moral descent into evil and cruelty. The presence of weapons and torments and horrors within the halls of Angband, they allude to the moral corruption and depravity that define this realm, and can be also seen in the example, for they came to the seat of Morgoth in his nethermost hall that was upheld by horror, lit by fire, and filled with weapons of death and torment. And the fact that Morgoth domain is a place of captivity for elves, let's say, it reflects moral fall of those who are enslaved and are subjected to his rule. Mordor. So Mordor is portrayed as a land that is steeped in evil and corruption. We can consider it as a heart of darkness in Tolkien world, especially in the Lord of the Rings, where Sauron's malevolent influence is most visible. Just as hell, that is often conceived as a place where evil is concentrated. Mordor embodies this notion with its oppressive and maleficent atmosphere, but to better depict Mordor's hellish imagery, we again need to take Fonstad Atlas, which laid a really good, I would say, perfect foundation. She described the landscape as sinister that can also mirror the darkness and malevolence traditionally associated with hellish realms. The land is scared by usually volcanic activity, including the volcano Mawdun, but there are also other volcanic regions such as Eiffel Duat, which means, if I remember correctly, black rock, and then Litpui is Ash Mountain, Litplat should be Ash Plain. When the Sam and Frodo, when they approach Mordor, the landscape unfolded before them, and it could be characterized as vast and dark plain, burning mountains far away, rivers of fire blazing fiercely, and this imagery evokes associations with hell that is often characterized by fire, smoke, and desolation. And similar description can be actually found in Bible, even though the similarities are often, I would say, metaphorical, and they are open to interpretations. The common imagery includes fire, darkness, and suffering, and the hell is described as a place of everlasting fire and darkness where weeping and gnashing of teeth is present. And similar imagery, especially the imagery of darkness and torment, is mirrored in Mordor, where the skies are perpetually darkened by the oppressive presence of Sauron, as it can be seen in the Return of the Ring, I believe. And the example is, it was dark and dim all day, the heavy shadow had deepened, great cloud streamed from the black land, devouring light. And apart from these similarities, another one can be found in Job, again in the Bible, Job 10:22, where Job would like to return to the land of darkness, as darkness itself, and of the shadow of death, without any order, where the light is as darkness. And these verse express Job's deep distress and anguish. He used vivid and, I would say, poetic language to describe the darkness and hopelessness he feels in his life at that moment. And the land of darkness and shadow of death represent the extreme suffering and despair and adversity that Job is experiencing. And he's basically saying that his life feels like an unending state of darkness, chaos, and disorder with no relief or order in sight. And the light as darkness suggests the idea that there is no hope or brightness in his current situation. And this exactly sense of hopelessness parallels with events that happen in Mordor when Sam and Frodo were approaching the Mount Doom. The landscape Sam described as dreary, flat and drab-hued, with no signs of life that serves as a reflection of hopelessness. And also the harsh environment that is filled with ash and desolation, it serves as a constant reminder of the challenges they face. And the ring itself, it exerts a corrupting influence that deepens the hobbit's despair. And as they are getting closer to the Mount Doom, the ring becomes increasingly burdensome, both physically, emotionally, and all this is multiplied by the fact that they are isolated, as they have no allies and no friends to help them. And the weight of their mission falls on their shoulders, and the absence of companionship amplifies their sense of hopelessness. And the description of Mordor is fitting, as the character of the land often mirrors the characters of its master Sauron. A contrast between Mordor and the land of south in boundary can be observed. While Mordor is it is a volcanic land that resemble hell, the lands beyond it are noticeably non-volcanic and more diverse in their natural beauty. Let's say Ithilien, that's a land that was recently influenced by Sauron's evil, and now it is described as now desolate, kept still, additional dry loveliness. And this description, I would say, it implies that even in the face of corruption, there's a lingering beauty and resilience in the natural world, and it suggests that the consequences of evil can mar but not extinguish the inherent godness and beauty that persists and provides a glimmer of hope in the darkness of times. So to conclude everything, basically, Utumno, that's the concept of Utumno as a symbol of moral consequence, it draws a parallels to the notion of hell as a realm of suffering that result from immoral choices. Angband, it represents more than a mere fortress in encapsulate defiance, suffering, the relentless pursuit of power, and it became a breeding ground for all the creatures. And Mordor, that stands as a symbol of darkness, despair, akin to traditional representation of hell. So we can see in these three locations that they remind us of hell and hellish realms, and we can compare it with Bible because it's really, I would say, similar. So yeah, thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your presentation. Does anybody have any questions, either here in the class or online?
I have one. That's all right. I was struck listening to that. I thought you did a great job of drawing out these sort of biblical parallels, and it drew out a couple of parallels in the English literary tradition. First with Milton, of course, right? The mind can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven. And then later Blake in his poem about Milton, Jerusalem, in which he, asks, could Jerusalem be builded here, looking out at the English countryside, now dominated by industry, among these dark satanic mills? I was sort of curious, I suppose, whether you thought this might be part of Tolkien's project of making a mythology for England, as it originally started out and later evolved. But is this sort of an English conception of hell in your mind? Well,
I was actually thinking about this when I was writing my thesis, but maybe because he was affected by the experience from war, I think this is just some kind of reflection, and I just hope this is not a like representation of the mythology for England. Let's hope it's not. Let's just hope this is just a reflection of his memories from his experience from World War. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, so Lenka, thank you very much for your presentation.